Sounds good.
Okay. Well, welcome everybody. My name is Cynthia Napec, and I am the president of the Leadership Louisville Center. So it is my privilege to welcome you to our virtual opportunity to join in and figure out if Bingham Fellows is something that is going to intrigue you. Um, Before I do, I just want to kind of give you here's the lay of the land. This is what we're up to. Give you a little bit of history of the Leadership Louisville Center. So that's what we're about this morning. So the Leadership Louisville Center is a 40-year-old organization. We have sister programs, if you will, in every city across the country. But what's unique about Leadership Louisville is we are larger, really, than most of our peer programs. And a lot of that is because this community really embraces civic leadership. And so where we started with Leadership Louisville as our flagship program, then we just kind of continued to grow and add more and more programs. But the thing that I love about the Leadership Louisville Center is that our purpose is to inspire and equip leaders to be better and do better. Those words all have a lot of meaning for us. When we talk about inspiring, we're really talking about the piece of who we are that is connected to greater good. Our path to leadership is always about trying to figure out how do we advance big change? How do we be part of the rising tide that lifts all ships? So when we talk about inspire, that's a big piece of what we do. But what we also realized is that if we're going to ask you to climb tall mountains, leap tall buildings in a single bound, then we also have to make sure that you are equipped, that you individually show up as the very best version of yourself. And so we talk about it in terms of be better, investments in you that help you go out into the community and do better. So inspiring and equipping leaders to be better and to do better is kind of the encapsulating, this is who we are, this is what we do. But how that manifests is through the programs that we run, right? And so I mentioned that we're larger than most of our counterpart programs, right? Because we started with our Leadership Louisville program, which is our flagship. But then we said, well, if we're going to do Leadership Louisville, we're going to round up all these bodies. Maybe we need a program where we need to pull in even more people. And so Focus Louisville, and some of you all may be alumni of Focus, is our 3-day program. It's the entree to the center, and it allows us to bring in just more people. We've run it multiple times during the year. And in fact, we had to hiatus it during COVID, but I'm so excited it's coming back this fall. And then we said, well, gosh, if we have a program where it's a short, quick jump in, we should also have a deep dive program, and that's Bingham Fellows. And that's what we're going to talk a little bit more about this morning. We added a young professionals program. And then we said, all right, if you have a young professionals program, now let's look at all the baby boomers as they start to transition into retirement. And so we added Encore is our latest ad in our civic programs that looks at baby boomers and how do we capture all their great wisdom and make sure that it stays plugged into the community. So those programs all focus on civic leadership as the headline, and then they have that whole equipping you as an individual as the understory. The Leadership Green Room reverses that. So the Leadership Green Room are the programs we run that invest in you. They're short little bites that are just primarily about helping you figure out how do you show up as the biggest, best version of yourself. So we do all of these things, but really, I think our reason to ETRA is we're trying to change the world for the better, right? We're trying to move the needle on big things. We're going to talk about Bingham Fellows in just a minute. But ultimately, when I look at big, amazing change and what it takes to drive that in this community and across the world and throughout the history of mankind, things. One is it's someone who figures out what their passion is. Like, what is that thing that really, man, I just can't rest until all of the children are fed. I cannot rest until all of the people are treated equally. I cannot rest until this terrible disease is cured. And there's a second thing. Always the first thing, someone who really gets excited about making a difference, about leaving a legacy. And the second thing, one person is enough to start a spark, but it's when they surround themselves with other humans who share that same passion that we really move the needle, that we really drive positive change. And ultimately, that's what these Leadership Louisville Center programs do. That's what we're good at, is we're good at helping people figure out what's their spark and then connecting them with other people who do that same thing. In particular, Bingham Fellows is a wonderful exemplar of how we do this. So let's talk about our agenda today, because you all came to find out about Bingham Fellows, and that's what I want to talk to you about. Okay, so here is for our little snapshot of time this morning. We are going to do introductions of your Leadership Louisville team. We're going to talk about what exactly is the Bingham Fellows, and then more specifically, so that's kind of broadly what are Bingham Fellows, but specifically, what is our topic this year? We're going to get into some nuts and bolts of how it works. And we're going to meet our graduates. Of course, we think the program's great, but you might want to hear from some completely and totally unbiased third-party witnesses. And so you're going to meet some of our graduates, and then we'll talk about how to apply, and you will have the opportunity to ask some questions. That's our agenda for today. And it starts with, what exactly is a Bingham Fellow? So I mentioned that Bingham Fellows is one of our 5 civic programs. It was created in 1988, so it actually has a pretty long track record of making a difference in this community. And the origin of the Bingham Fellows was basically, we had this program that we were running, and it's our Leadership Louisville flagship program. Round up all these leaders, and sometimes at the end of the program, they would adopt a small project, but our board of directors thought there was a greater so what. You know, if you round up all these people and you introduce them to civic leadership, so what? They felt like there was something much bigger that could happen. And what they endeavored to do is create this Bingham Fellows program where, instead of it being an introduction, it could be a deep dive. And the big challenge is, at the end of this experience, they didn't want to just have a little one-day project. They wanted to task these significant community leaders with move the needle. If we round up a group of amazing, thoughtful, wise, creative people, and we give them a little bit of guardrails and facilitation, then can we ask them to significantly move the needle on something really, really important to our community? And that's how Bingham Fellows started, basically. Bingham Fellows have a great track record of answering that call, of being that so what. And that's kind of why I say they're a really great exemplar of our mission, is because we can point back to 30 years of this program making a difference. And that's really important to me. Your time is incredibly valuable. You all are very busy, very important people. And what I want is at the end of this experience, I want you to point back to something that will be part of your legacy in this community. And Bingham Fellows have done a lot of that. Sometimes Bingham Fellows look at the community and say, we're missing an essential asset. And they have created things out of nothing. One of our earliest projects was the creation of the housing partnership. This was well before communities looked at fair housing from a community lens, right? So Housing Partnership was one of the earliest organizations to come together and address housing in a community. One West came out of the year that we looked at how do we create a path to prosperity for West Louisville. And One West is leading great projects and is going to have a major impact in how do we elevate the 9 neighborhoods of West Louisville. But Bingham Fellows don't always create something out of thin air. Sometimes Bingham Fellows find a spark that is awesome, that is amazing, that if we just fan that flame, can really do some good things. So New Roots is an organization that worked on food deserts. And what they do is they basically take kind of a farmer's market concept and bring it into some of the areas that really don't have access to groceries. And it's a blend of like a farmer's market and a grocery co-op. So everybody leaves with not only a basket of fresh food, but they also leave with a little bit of learning about how to be a super chef. And they were just doing this as kind of a one-off. So Bingham Fellows actually helped them multiply it and grow from having just this one to having 18. They helped them land a $1 million grant from Johnson & Johnson and really take it from this big to this big. So all of these things, there's just all these opportunities that are look at something, find something that we're missing as a community and create it to find these little sparks, fan the flame and help them grow. And Bingham Fellows use a special process that we have co-opted from one of our team members, Lisa Zangari, worked for What If. What If is an innovation consultancy in Manhattan. All they do is work with really big corporations, companies like Procter & Gamble, and big names like that, and they help them figure out how to innovate. And so with their permission, we actually borrowed on some of their innovation work and applied it to how do we innovate in the community. So we have this whole system that goes with it that is about making sure that we're using good form and process to create innovative ideas that will move the needle. So before I kind of kick it back over to Joe to talk about topic, I will give it one last endorsement, which is to say that I was a Bingham Fellow. I was a Bingham Fellow before I became the president of the organization, and I loved it. Bingham Fellows is what helped me fall in love with the Leadership Louisville Center and what they're doing. And here's why. So I talked a lot about the good that happens in the community and how we're advancing the greater good. But I also want to talk about the good that happens for you individually and for your organization, because that's one of the things that I found really important is I am fascinated by leadership, right? That makes sense. And Bingham Fellows for me is a master's class. More so, and I've done fancy classes. I've done the fancy leadership classes at Harvard and everywhere else. And Bingham Fellows is, I think, was one of the most, one of the biggest and best, most transformational leadership experiences that I'd had. So I think this is a great opportunity to grow outside of positional leadership. When you're a Bingham Fellow, You don't get to use like everyone on this call, you all have fancy titles, right? You're all senior vice president of this, and they gave you a huge project because you're a superstar. And I know everybody's a superstar. Only superstars actually end up raising their hand to be interested in Bingham Fellows. That's how I know. Nobody wants to take on extra work unless they're a rock star. And here is the thing. When I put you in a room of other rock stars and you don't get to use your positional authority, your senior vice president title, and I tell you to move big mountains, it's an incredible, fascinating study in leadership. So more so than anything else I've done, Bingham Fellows elevated my capacity to lead. So that's the what's in it for you. And that is what I think is fascinating about Bingham Fellows. The process that you'll learn is highly replicable, and you'll be able to use that at your organization. So your organization benefits. And ultimately, that's kind of what I love about Leadership Louisville anyway, is the community wins, you win, your organization wins. And it's just a great opportunity for you to spend a year doing something important. Okay, so now my dog is telling me that it must be time for me to kick it over to Joe and talk to you about what the topic is and what you're signing up for this year.
Thank you, Cynthia. Good morning, everyone. I'm Jo Lloyd-Triplett. I'm the Leadership Development Manager at the Leadership Louisville Center, and I'm going to spend a few moments telling you what you could expect next year as a Bingham Fellow and the topic itself. And first of all, I want to explain that every year, as you probably know, Bingham Fellows is topic-based, and we spend a lot of time and energy researching what should be the next topic. And there are several criteria that come along with that as we make that decision. And so things that we look at are, is the topic mission critical to Louisville? We want it to be something that is very timely and really important for our community. And we also look and make sure that there's already a critical mass of people that are already engaged in this general area, because as Cynthia said, this is really an accelerator. It's not always something new. We want the community already to have this as top of mind and have champions already behind it. And then equally important is sustainability, because we want whatever the outcomes are to really be long-term impact for Louisville. And so, as Cynthia said, moving that needle. So sustainability also really plays a big role in what we decide for the topic. So as you know, downtown has been picked for 2022. And I'm sure everyone is aware of all the challenges that our downtown has faced over the past 18 months or so. And if you've been living in Louisville for the past 10, 15 years, then you'll have seen that massive growth that we have gone through, and all the new things and exciting things that have happened to downtown Louisville, like new hotels popping up, and there was lots of new residential buildings coming in, especially down in New Lou. We have that new convention center, the new beautiful facelift that it received. The waterfront has changed dramatically. We have a new stadium, so and distilleries almost on every corner. So lots of really great things happening in our downtown. And then we went through a year of really the business community moving out, and it's been very quiet. And so we lost that acceleration. And so with the challenges that downtown has faced come lots of great opportunities as well. And that's where we feel like Bingham Fellows can really be impactful as we kind of rediscover what can downtown be, not just getting it back to where it was, but reimagining a really fantastic downtown where everyone wants to be. And so I want to share with you some of the things that we will be looking at, and the Bingham Fellows will be diving into as we go through the year. So here are just some suggestions or ideas of what we'll be looking at and discussing. So first of all, increasing foot traffic. So not just during business hours, not just during games at the Yum Center, but what if downtown was really the place to be all the time? families, for young people, for recreation, for everything. It was just the place to go. You're okay, and we can go to the next one. Next one is, how do we repurpose vacant office space? So we know that not 100% of the business community that has left downtown to work remotely is coming back. That is really a national trend. Best estimates are around 50 to 60% returning ultimately. So how can we be really innovative in reusing that office space that will be left vacant and repurposing it for entrepreneurs, for small businesses, for residential? Or how can businesses reuse that space themselves to ensure that their employees do want to be in the office? Is there a gym that can be added? So what could that look like? How do we make it people-centric and really integrate it into all our residents? So we know a great place to live is a great place to visit. So how do we really elevate our downtown? We do have a great tourism boom, but how do we make it equally attractive for our own community? How do we support our locally owned businesses? So that foot traffic that we have lost, we need to offset that to support those small businesses downtown to ensure the community can really thrive. So again, how do we do that? And what if downtown was the place people wanted to work, even if they work from home? So they spend their times in the cafes, they have lunch meetings, they work in parks that have Wi-Fi. They want to be downtown and spend their time moving around the different assets, even if they're not necessarily based in an office. Could that be something that we look at? How do we improve mobility? So neighborhoods that really thrive have great mobility. People can move between all of the assets, and the key number is 15 minutes, and that's either on foot or bike or public transport. How do you move within essential assets within 15 minutes? Is that something we could get closer to allow people to move around in an easier way and more pedestrian-friendly way in our downtown? Creating corridors is something else we'll look at. So we have lots of really great amenities already. We have Museum Row, we have Whiskey Row, we have the stadium, we have the walking bridge, but getting between all of those means driving and finding a new parking space. And so what innovative ways can the Bingham Fellows think of to ease that transition between those amenities for our residents, to make coming downtown just a one stop? Is there something innovative we can do in that area? And then addressing homelessness and public safety. And so there are two things here. There are real safety issues that need to be addressed and perhaps could be addressed by the Bingham Fellows. And then there are the perceptions of safety downtown that might not be a reality. And so how do we address both of those things to really educate our community on the safety of downtown while taking care of the real issues that do exist as well? And so finally, yes, how do we invest? What are going to be the priorities of the way we move forward? And that's really what Bingham Fellows will look at. What really is important to us as a community to focus on first and move in that direction of really reinventing what our downtown can be to serve all our people. So that's a bit about the topic, but I also want to talk to you about the year. We get a lot of questions about the time commitment and what's the year going to look like and the flow. And I know that you are all busy people. And so let's talk about what that would look like. So the front end of the year, January through April, is more about sitting back and learning and listening. So all of those things that we talked about, we will be bringing in subject matter experts to talk to you and tell you, share all of their knowledge and advice with you. So you'll be just capturing data points and information throughout those months. Outside of the program days, there's not a lot about work, apart from maybe reading. We'll probably send you articles, and the speakers may suggest articles as well to read up on, to increase your frame of reference for as we go down the road and down the funnel into the topic. So in May, we have a 2-day retreat. It's an intense 2 days where we take all of those data points that you have gathered and we distill them down. And we have this innovative process based off the what if curriculum to really help you focus on where you want to be. And you will leave that retreat with a project and with a team and ready to go. So that last portion of the year, the June through December, that's more of the heavy lift. That's the outside the program day time commitment comes in. So you'll be on your team and working on that project, redefining it and growing it, building it. And we will be with you every step of the way along that process. You'll be updating us. We will have monthly check-ins and continue to work with you alongside you, as well as a steering committee that is also made up of experts in this area. They are helping guide us on the topic itself, on the curriculum, who to bring in to speak to you, but then they will also be a sounding board for you. So when you're in your teams, you will get to meet with the steering committee, talk to them about your projects, get their feedback, ideas and resources to really also help support you on that journey. In January 23, that's when you will launch to the community what your project is. This is a public launch, and you would also get to attend the public launch of the current Bingham Fellows class that will graduate this coming January. So that would be your first day in the program, and you'll get to see kind of what the vision is for when you end 12 months later. And you would get to invite the guests to this event, anyone from the community, any stakeholders that are going to be involved with your project, anyone that it would affect, and anyone that you need to know about what it is you're going to be doing going forward as this is launched publicly. And this was obviously taken before the pandemic. We've had a variety of virtual, in-person and hybrid launches in the meantime. We expect by 23 to be back in this kind of arena. But again, this is your program, so you will guide us on your comfort level with that. And I believe the next thing to do is to share some information with individuals who've already been through this process. So we could speak all day about how we love Bingham Fellows and how impactful it is and what a great experience, but we'd like you to hear it from individuals who've gone through it and can share their own experience with you and answer questions. So I'm going to kick this over to Amy Jewell to continue on this morning.
Yes, thank you, Joe. And thank you all so much for being here. As Cynthia said, we know that you all are very busy. So thank you for joining us this morning to hear a little bit more about the exciting year that we've got coming up. One of my very favorite parts about working at the Leadership Louisville Center is working with the amazing community members that we are able to work with. And these 4 individuals that we've brought today who are dedicating their time are such good friends of the center, and we are just always very grateful to see them around town. So I will go ahead and toss it to our panelists. If you wouldn't mind, Father Schooner, if we could go ahead and get you to introduce yourself, maybe talk about when you went through, what the topic was, and what your specific project was. We're going to do just the introductions first, and then we can get into the bulk of the questions right after everybody introduces themselves. So Father Schooner, and then if we want to go Kelly, Bill, and then Pamela.
Right, thank you, Amy. I'm Father Jeff Schooner. Nice to meet you all. I am the pastor of St. Patrick Parish out in Middletown and the pastor of St. Boniface, which is down in Nulu, about 5,000 total members in both parishes. And then I also serve as the vicar for priests for the Archdiocese of Louisville. So I help the Archbishop in kind of training, continuing formation, assignments, and other issues with the priests with the Archdiocese of Louisville. We went through in 2020, so we were the 2020 class where everything changed. So we started in person and ended virtually. Our topic was making Louisville a top tier city, and that had really interesting parts of that as we compared to other cities in our region, other competitor cities, and what kind of things were markers of reaching the next level as a community. Of course, in the midst of that, we had the pandemic, and then we had the racial tensions and the demonstrations and all those things that were going on. And that shifted some of our focus. to how we approach that. My particular group focused on tax reform. So you may have heard of things like the local option sales tax. And so we did a deep dive into tax legislation and how to allow local communities to have the control to determine their own tax streams, what sort of streams of financing are available, and how to be able to make that happen. In particular, we focused on the second stage of the process. So the first stage requires in Kentucky a constitutional amendment to the Kentucky Constitution. And then the second stage is that amendment has to be approved by voters. And so we've sort of owned the space between the legislative action and the statewide vote. I can talk more about my group and those dynamics and things later, but that's sort of the basics of who we were. Our group was called You Decide Kentucky.
Thanks, Jeff. Go ahead. Kelly, if you want to go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Kelly Watson. I am the Equity and Compliance Officer at Louisville MSD. But prior to that, I was the Mayor's Chief Equity Officer, and I was the Equity Officer at the time that I participated and graduated from Bingham Fellows. Pamela was also in my class, and we were in the same group. So I'll save some information for her to share. But we went through in 2019, and our topic was related to education and how to help our public school system become a more equitable and innovative environment. We decided in our group, as we went through all of our clues and information gathering, that we wanted to focus on the socially emotional learning of children and in belonging, and in particular for girls of color. And for our group, I think Cynthia may have mentioned, sometimes it's not worth it to really create something new. So we actually teamed up with a program that was already in existence through GCPS that was doing really well, but very under-resourced. And so what we did for that program was we were able to provide her a bit of a framework for expansion. The girls in the program were at just several middle schools. They wanted to add a Saturday session. And so we were able to help with that, as well as to get sponsors for the program to provide lunch for the girls when they met on Saturdays. And she also wanted to expand schools. And so we were into more middle schools, basically. And we were able to help her and provide that framework from there. I will say that aside from working with my fantastic team members, the best part of it was we actually were present and volunteered and met the girls and talked to the girls on the Saturdays when they had session while we were there. And of course, our project kind of spilled over past the program year, which I was really glad that we did. And I was super glad to be involved with those amazing young women. And a lot of what we provided for the program, because it was already through JCPS, has led to the Girls of Color School, the Grace James STEAM Academy. So thanks. Sorry, Pamela, if I talk too much.
No, totally fine. Bill, do you want to go ahead? Oop, hang on one second. It looks like Bill's unmuting. Patricia, do you want to go ahead? Well, oh, I think.
Sorry, I didn't realize I was muted.
You're fine.
So it's really great to be with all of you today, because I think this topic that's coming up is really an important topic. You have a really great opportunity to have an impact on the community by addressing some of the issues we face. The Bingham Fellows, I was in the class with Father Jeff. I learned what a great public speaker he was. It came out very naturally for him. We had a really unique experience running into COVID and the unrest and all the issues that were faced. And I think I learned something that you all will understand later. And Jo said it. She said, "We will be with you every step of the way." And the staff is tremendous. They are truly with you every step of the way. They had to be very flexible and adaptable during our class. It was a series of very unique situations, and they literally would change in midstream so that we could have a more full experience. And it was incredibly impressive to be able to do that. I was involved with a group that studied the issue of, we have a minority population of 22%, and yet only 2% of the businesses in our town are owned by minority folks. That's a tragic flaw if you're trying to move our city forward to be an upper tier city. We have to have all of our community members involved. We have to have the ability to increase that level of ownership. And so the name of our team was 2 to 22. It was creating methods of connectivity so that people could access people and be connected to the infrastructure that we have in this community so that they could move business plans forward, at various levels, from the people who are just starting out and need some basic help from accountants and PR people and folks with technology background, to the next stage where you're really wanting to talk to banks and figure out how to finance and where the pools of money that can incent something to happen and really support the creation of local business, and all the way through to the levels that you get into if you're successful and you need to bridge out and create a larger and larger company with more locations. All of those stages need different types of connectivity, and so that was our focus. We had a very dynamic group of people. I'm sort of the old dog in the group, and it was really impressive to see the technical skills that some of our folks had, the way that they could create a platform where we could make this concept sustainable. It took some money. We had to raise a little bit of money, but we really needed people who could put together a platform that mentors and connectors could get their information in there, and then it could be spread on a more wide basis to people who would need access to it. And it was very, very exciting for me to be a part of that team. I love being around the new generation of folks, and I really enjoyed meeting the people that made up the Bingham Fellows class. So.
Great, thank you, Bill, dear Lord, and then Patricia.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Patricia Williams, and I am the president and CEO at Wesley House Community Services. As Kelly said earlier, we were on the same team. So we were in the 2019 class, and our subject was Mobilizing a Community for Student Success. So the project that we worked on around just trying to increase the sense of belonging for girls of color was really, personally impactful for me because of me being a servant leader and really getting this opportunity through the Bingham Fellows platform to bring awareness and to elevate that there's a need there, right? To impact the right for every single student to feel that they belong when they go to school every day. So the work was awesome. And as Kelly already said, sometimes the best thing we can do is try to elevate and bring attention and awareness to a great program like Girls on the Rise is, that's already there, but now there's really an increased focus on how to make sure that sense of belonging is being intentionally improved and increased for girls of color. Just an amazing experience across the board. I'm somewhat of an introvert, so these kind of forced engagement experience from Leadership Louisville, nobody does it better. They didn't pay me to say that, but it was just an amazing experience for me to, connect with the class, to meet all of these different folks, and then to really feel like at the end of the day, I paid my, small little contribution to help make a difference. And I mean, it's a continuum of that. So that awareness of, I'm from Louisville, born and raised, and sometimes we think we know everything that's happening in the community, but a lot of it, I did not have a clue. So bringing people to the table that may not ever get an opportunity one-on-one to speak to, Leadership Louisville, Bingham Fellows does that. And it kind of says, okay, well, where do you want to apply, your leadership? And it kind of makes you start thinking about, your civic responsibility and that legacy that Cynthia mentioned earlier. So overall for me, it was an amazing experience, and I definitely wouldn't trade the time. It was time well spent, both personally and professionally.
Great. Well, thank you all so much. Patricia, that was actually a perfect segue into one of our questions, which is around networking. So obviously you four are very well networked, have very deep connections in this community. Can you talk about how maybe Bingham Fellows helped you build that network and just the different relationships that came out of your experience? Anyone can take that one if you'd like.
For me, go ahead, Kelly. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to add on to what I was saying about just being, an introvert and really being in a room with, so many phenomenal leaders. And, the way that Leadership Louisville really is intentional about ensuring that you have an opportunity to network and providing some strategic suggestions and ways that you can create sustainable relationships and tools that you can not only use, in that room within the class, but so many of the tips and secrets that I've learned from that class. I mean, I use today in my role and in the various spaces that I have to go in. I mean, so it's undeniable. Folks that I met during the class, I have now, had to call. I'm in a servant leadership role at a nonprofit. So, Kelly and I have done some things together since our class, and it's just wonderful. It goes far beyond that class experience.
Thank you, Patricia. Kelly, if you want to.
Yes, I was going to add that, there's quite a lot of care and thought that is done in creating each class. And so you have subject matter experts, you have people who are just becoming familiar with the topic, you have people who are in different sectors and different industries. And so the opportunity to meet some of the people that were in my class that I probably would not normally have had a chance to be in the same room with for a really long time was really a fantastic takeaway. And I do still talk with, I don't even know how many of my classmates just on different things all the time, in addition to just being able to work with each other. And so I attribute that to Bingham Fellows because I know that some of the individuals in our class, our paths may not have crossed otherwise. So it was great to just be able to network professionally, but also to come out of the class and have genuine connections and friends also. So.
Thank you, Kelly. And sorry, Father Funer and Bill, if you have any questions for our graduates, definitely make sure you're utilizing the chat. We will get to you in just a moment. So be sure to enter your questions there. Father Funer or Bill, did you all have anything to add?
Sure. Excuse me. I think that I would agree with what's already been said around the networking. It was also an amazing experience to have the different perspectives, the expertise and backgrounds and experiences that could expand my own horizons. And so that was a very valuable thing for me, especially in the midst of the challenges we were facing. Not just skill sets, but also wisdom and knowledge and that input. And then our group has been focused since Bingham Fellows graduation on building a statewide coalition. So we've got members of our board that have expanded from Paducah to Pikeville, and that's a broadening of that perspective too. So I think in terms of the sustainable relationships that were talked about, but the capacity to connect with people that have very different backgrounds and ideas and can help me to grow through that has been a great blessing for me.
Yeah, I think it's hard to add anything to that, but I really just want to reiterate the things I heard that really resonated with me. Kelly talking about genuine relationships. I mean, you meet people and it's not like you don't know them. You've really gone through an experience with them and you know them much better than you would in a normal circumstance. And they become people that you know you can rely on, that we see all the time. I see people that I didn't know I could know. And not only do I know them, I know about them, and I know how they think. I think the other thing that Patricia said is that gives you an ability to do something that we don't have the ability to do without those connections, which is bring focus to critical issues within the community and really elevate that so there is potentially more political will to deal with the issues we face. And I think that power of these relationships gives you an ability to do that in a way that you don't have without those deep sort of relationships where you really understand where people are coming from.
Absolutely. Thank you all so much for your kind words. I promise we didn't pay any of them to say anything. Patricia was exactly right on the point. So my final question for you all, as we kind of wrap up this portion, we've got about 5 more minutes, is around your personal growth. You all are obviously extremely well established. As Cynthia said, you have influence in the community, in your organizations. Can you talk a little bit about how you personally grew? I know a few of you have kind of touched on it, but just specifically how you have become even maybe more self-aware, more knowledgeable around specific community issues since your experience in Bingham Fellows.
Sure. As I thought about it, there were a couple of things that really touched for me the areas of my own growth. One was in the sort of diverse skill sets that people brought, how to organize for action, how to be able to marshal the talents and abilities of various contributors for a significant cause. That really helped me in my other roles that I have. I also think that one of the big areas for me was being able to come up against the different perspectives and expanded perspectives for me, like I kind of mentioned, especially in terms of diversity issues and being able to expand my horizons with that in a way that I wouldn't have without those relationships and that input. And so I very much value that as well for my own personal growth. And then I think, we went through it in the midst of a pandemic, and to be able to have the regular connection and purposeful action that we were having in the midst of that kind of helped to provide motivation and focus for me in all the areas that I was going through. So I think that would be true in any case, but I really felt that it was a gift to me to have that purpose in the midst of shutdown and trying to figure out how to come back and to do all those things. So it was a great benefit on multiple levels. Those were 3 of the key ones for me.
Thank you, Father Schooner.
I guess I'll just speak because, I agree with Father Jeff. The thing it was not the best year probably to go through Bingham Fellows in a lot of ways, but it was the best year to go through Bingham Fellows in a lot of ways. And one of those ways, I think I got a much deeper understanding of the concept of structural racism in a lot of our institutions, far beyond what I understood. There were stories from individuals that were very open. It was almost like going to a religious retreat on one of the days that we had. And it was a very, very emotional day. And you came away with a real special bond from that, that I will never forget. I mean, it was very powerful. And it's gotten me really focused on understanding those needs better than I did before. It's gotten me really active in trying to address some of the things within the community that really have got to change for us to be successful. So it very powerful.
Thank you, Bill. Kelly or Patricia?
I would just say that as our team worked on our project, which was really about, the girls of color belonging and having social emotional support in school, right? And those, that sense of belonging, that being an active listener, listening to the girls and hearing what their issues are and really realizing how important that is, was a very important, skill set to still be able to act in that sense of, just kind of daily trauma, right? Like every day you go to school, every day you may go to work and you don't feel heard or valued, right? And so how are you able to build these young ladies up in a way that will allow them to have wonderful self-esteem, to be heard, to feel like they are equal contributors, right? And we all know that at times we feel like this at work as well. And for me personally, watching the girls be very vulnerable and share their feelings with us was really important, because in 2019, for me, I was also going through a lot of trauma and trying to heal, and really looking at those girls for the strength they had in being so vulnerable. I was really able to learn from this and pull together my own self of resilience, particularly when you see yourself and who you're speaking with. So that was very important and a lesson that I will forever keep.
Thank you for that powerful takeaway, Kelly. Patricia?
Yeah, so definitely I agree and echo everything that's already been said. I think, personally, learning, some new skill sets in terms of project management, and really, at that executive level, how to navigate, meetings and discussions when you've got several really intelligent people in the room that may have conflicting views. I love that Leadership Louisville didn't necessarily solve all of our problems and our disagreements, but they gave us really helpful hints and talking points to use and to really think through, where we wanted to go as our individual project teams and groups. And again, those are strategies, that you take back into the workplace. So really, again, just an amazing experience as far as, personal development and, as a leader, navigating those conversations and not being afraid of difficult conversations either. I think sometimes, we steer away from the difficult topics where, Bingham Fellows, Leadership Louisville, they challenge you to have those difficult conversations and stay focused on the goal and be respectful, of course. But that's the only way that we can ever come to solutions, is if we talk about it. So yeah, thank you.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for being with us this morning. I know that there are a few questions in the chat. So what I'm going to do is quickly take us through the application process, and then we're going to come back to the grads. The attendees did have just a few quick questions for you, but I promise I will be very brief with how the application works, because it's pretty, it's actually very, it's very simple. So let's see. So as Cynthia and Joe mentioned, the program days are January through December 2022, with the project launch in 2023. The opening retreat days are mandatory. So if you cannot make those, please, we would love for you to apply maybe next year. But those opening, the opening days and the retreat in May are mandatory days. So I'll be sending out the calendar right after this, along with all of the links to apply. So if you have any questions at all, please don't hesitate to shoot me an email, give me a call, whatever I can do to help. But the application is pretty straightforward. We've actually made it incredibly easy to apply this year, just because we want to make sure that we get as many amazing people as possible, and certainly understand that you are strapped for time. So we want to be very cognizant of that. So the online form will be emailed to you directly. Again, super quick and easy. We actually are asking you to provide 2 references in that application. So pretty easy stuff. We will be calling them if we have any questions, so you might want to give them a heads up that you're applying. We will have optional interviews after we receive your application. We will reach out to you with more information on those interviews. and you will need to just send over a quick headshot. I will let you know that the tuition for Bingham Fellows is $4,500. There is tuition assistance available. So if you should need assistance, if your employer isn't covering it, if you're from an important community organization that you need that tuition assistance, that is available. That application is actually embedded within the application for Bingham Fellows itself. So pretty quick and simple, just a few questions about how much funding you do need and to make it possible. Unfortunately, because we are a nonprofit, we cannot fund anyone's full experience, but we oftentimes can fund up to half and a little bit more depending on how the circumstances. And so certainly, please definitely let us know how we can help, and we will do our best to do so. And then the deadline for those applications is October 29th. Again, if you have any questions at all about that, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. My cell phone will be directly in there. So if you have any questions along the way, definitely feel free to email me, call me, text me, snail mail me, although that might get to the center past October 29th, but happy to answer any questions that you might have about the process. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and we're going to go back to some of the questions that were asked in the chat, because you all have had some really great questions. So how critical is it to have been a Leadership Louisville participant before applying to Bingham Fellows? Patricia is actually in Leadership Louisville right now. So she is a wonderful example of the fact that you do not have to be a grad of our programs to go through Bingham Fellows. We still would adore having your application and having you in the cohort. Patricia, can you talk about your experience kind of going from Bingham to leadership rather than leadership to Bingham? I know that's oftentimes.
Yeah, so of course, that kind of speaks to my belief in Leadership Louisville, right? So I've decided to do the Leadership Louisville class. And I honestly feel like it's a smoother transition because Bingham Fellows is more of that deep dive and a lot of opportunity for personal, professional development and, you know, already kind of having a lot of those networking skills and things along those lines. Leadership Louisville is a little bit broader and not so much focused, but more on a specific topic. It's not a deep dive in the sense that Bingham Fellows was. So I don't see it being a conflict at all. Of course, we're still early on in the Leadership Louisville class, but I really appreciate the experience that I already have going through Bingham Fellows in this current opportunity with the class. So.
Great. Thank you so much, Patricia. Jeff or Bill, this one's actually directed at going through the pandemic. Do you feel like you have gained the skills to lessen a generational divide that may revolve around technology? And will that emphasis on technology carry forward?
So I would say definitely it was very helpful. Even in the way we as an organization in my parishes and with the Archdiocese have adapted to the technology. I think it's provided a much wider list of options of how to connect with folks. And so we continue to do that. And there are changes that we've made that we'll never go back to, right? I mean, we'll never go away from for that. And then I also think, you know, our commitment to expanding our connection with younger generations has borne fruit in that we're invested in them and trying to meet in their world, not just trying to draw them into our world.
Thank you,
I
Jeff.
agree wholeheartedly with that. I think that it really allowed us to do a lot online. I also must say it really, you realized, and when you got in your small group, that to really dig into a topic, to try to come up with the solutions, we decided it was better for us to be in a room. And so there's that dual thing that goes on. And I think I was very pleased that we were able to continue with the big group and not lose anything. It really went well, I thought. We got a lot of information out. It was relatively simple. It was successful. But then we didn't sustain that. We had a couple online meetings as a small group and then decided that just we weren't going anywhere. So we readapted on that and got together in a spread out huge room and had those kind of dialogues that allowed you to really brainstorm solutions. So, and I think we'll always live with that kind of duality as we move forward.
Great. Thank you all so much. Well, I think the majority of people are on mute, so I would assume that they are all clapping for you all right now, but thank you so much for all of your all's times this morning. We are so grateful to have you with us. Kelly, Patricia, Father Shooter, and Bill, thank you all so much for your time and efforts. We did have one more question in the chat, and so just wanted to touch on that before we wrap up this morning. I know we're going a little bit over time, so thank you all so much for joining us this morning again. Joe, we have a great question about program days. Will the program days be recorded? There's somebody who has a trip that is on one of the non-mandatory days, and so they were asking if those sessions would be recorded.
That is a great question. We typically don't record sessions. However, because we have some brand new wonderful equipment, if we are in our classroom, we could potentially live stream it. I would say it would probably depend on the speakers and the content and if they would be comfortable with whatever they share. We do have a lot of Vegas rules in Bingham Fellows because we want you to be able to be very comfortable and vulnerable and speak your mind and share with one another. So sometimes there'll be a group decision that we're not going to share this outside of the room. In those cases, we would not record it and share it. So I think it's a case-by-case basis, and depending on what day you're missing. But we can talk about that. And if we can get the content to you, we absolutely would. So we will we'll work on that with you.
Perfect. Well, thank you all so much again for joining us this morning. We cannot thank you enough for your interest in Bingham Fellows. And if you have any questions, definitely hang on the line, give me a call, and we hope to see your application before October 29th.